All right. So good evening, everybody. My name is Ritesh. As he said, I am a co-founder of a platform called Stack.me. Stack.me is a platform that we've created for serial fiction, where you can publish serial fiction and not only publish serial fiction, but actually charge for it, because there are 500 million people who read serial fiction every month. But you will be hard pressed to actually think about writers who write serial fiction who actually make money, because all of these platforms don't allow these writers to make money, right? So that's sort of like the paradigm shift that I'm here to sort of talk about, right? So the way we see it is there's a revolution brewing in the large publishing industry. Which is what we are here all for, which is NFTs, right? So the total publishing industry last year was $100 billion. So they sold books worth about $100 billion last year. The writers made $10 billion out of that $100 billion. So publishers kept 90% of the earnings from the $100 billion, right? There are two things that are very wrong with this picture. One is the fact that writers only got 10% of the earnings out of $100 billion. And the second is that the total industry is actually only $100 billion. And I'll talk about these two and why we think that NFTs are actually here to change both of these. And so the first thing, why did writers only get 10% of sort of like the total earnings there, right? So you see, for the last like hundreds of years, both readers and writers have been at the mercy of this old publishing juggernaut that is does not want to innovate, is very slow to change, and also is beholden to a select few archaic dinosaurs that sort of control things how they work, right? So that is one of the main reasons why that is happening, right? Which it's a model where they extract most of the value and sort of keep it. And why do they keep that amount of money? Is because they control distribution, right? They control who gets published, where they get published, where they are sold. In 2023, if somebody is charging 90% for distribution, that should be a crime, right? Because TikTok gives better distribution than Penguin Publishing. Instagram will probably give better distribution than any other famous publishing house that's out there, and the same is true for other social media platforms. What further complicates the situation is the platforms that give distribution also do not allow writers to make money, because every platform is actually set up to be a reader-first platform versus a writer-first platform. Which brings me to the second question, which is, why is it only a $100 billion industry? So for the last few hundred years, since the books were invented and the writers have been writing them, we've only been selling books and buying books. We haven't moved the monetization beyond books when it comes to the written world. This is where the NFTs actually have a tremendous potential to upend how the publishing industry works. All right. Creativity is just one aspect of it, but think about all the possible scenarios beyond books that you actually have the ability to create now with this, right? So the first option, assume that you want to sort of create limited edition collection for your digital stuff, right? In Web 2 world, this wouldn't have been possible, but NFTs sort of allow you to do that. That's the simplest use case of it, right? The next use case of it is actually you can break down a novel and sell them as serialized fiction, right? 500 million people read serialized fiction every month, as I said, and this is outside of China. If you add Chinese readership of serialized fiction, that's close to 1 billion. In China, just the serialized fiction business is a $5 billion a year business and growing very, very quickly. The readership of serialized fiction is also growing very, very quickly as well, right? So when you think about NFTs coming into this space, the way this tends to happen, the shape this can take is when you break down a book into chapters, that now multiplies your ability to actually monetize the content that you have, right? So instead of selling one book, you're now selling 45 chapters, right? Instead of selling one book, you are not only selling 45 chapters, but you're also creating content within each of those chapters that can then be converted into collectibles. Not only writers can create collectibles that you can sell, but you can also issue tokens to readers where they can create their own collectibles. So with more and more content, you're actually multiplying the number of things that you are willing to sell. And if you guys have, and if any of you have been in traditional business where you create SKUs to sell, it's typical that the more SKUs you have, the more opportunities you have to actually engage the consumer, right? So instead of one book as the single piece of content, the way to think about this in this new age, in the new world, is to actually look at a book as multiple SKUs that not only you are creating, but you're also letting your readers participate. The other really, really interesting, format that is at stake here, which we at Stack are starting to experiment with, is actually co-creation, right? So a writer, so and this is where it's not just the NFTs, but the mix of sort of like NFTs and AI coming together. So assume a serialized fiction novel that you've written. It's a 60-chapter serialized fiction that you've written. Every 5th chapter, you actually drop in a set of tokens that allow a bunch of different possibilities, right? One is that if somebody has the token for that chapter, they actually get to name a character, right? It's a very simple use case of it. Another possible token use case here would be you get to, if it's a thriller or a mystery, you get to decide who gets killed off, right? That's another one, right? The other ones, and this is here, the list is endless. I'm just going to name 4 or 5, right? The other one is you actually, it's a very specific token where the story doesn't change for anybody else, but just you. So you are giving, and this could be in a way where you actually preset and saying, hey, look, this is one of the 5 endings that you can pick from, or they can write their own ending. This is where AI comes in, right? AI comes in and says, and then now AI has learned your writing style. So it actually, when it completes the chapter for your reader, it is actually completing it in the same tone and sort of, prose that you have as a writer, right? The other possibility, again, this is something that we are experimenting with on Stack as well, is you give the reader ability to consume how they want to consume the content. So for example, you've written this, but would you want them to be able to illustrate certain parts of the novel that they really feel deeply about, right? So let's say it's a romantic serial fiction, and there's a scene where the protagonists are actually meeting or having a special moment for the first time. The reader wants to imagine or visualize what that looks like, right? Today on Stack, we've actually created the ability where they can select a sentence and they can hit a button, and then that allows them to sort of visualize what that would look like. As it gets more advanced, you can actually specify and say, hey, look, here is what it could look like, right? So there are so many scenarios that NFTs make possible where a book from a single SKU, becomes a multiple sort of like events that you can engage your readers with. You can have your readers participate. You increase the number of transactions that you can have with a reader. You increase the amount of engagement that you have with your readers, and you are creating a much stronger community that feels one with your content versus them just consuming your content and actually moving on. The other thing that this gives you the ability, which is, again, it's not just about cutting out the middleman, but the direct relationship with your reader, right? It creates a much deeper relationship with your reader beyond just sort of like, hey, somebody read it, they moved on to the next one, they moved on to the next one as well, right? So there are a few different things that actually can really upend the traditional publishing model, where you are no longer beholden to a publisher of where it's sold, how it's sold, for how much is it sold. Because again, with NFTs, the whole dynamic pricing comes into place. And again, we are seeing this play out as well, where different pricing for different chapters is actually leading to much higher monetization for readers, for writers as well. So breaking down a book and then doing different things with it, even with less number of readers, your eventual monetization actually goes up strongly across the board. What do we need to do to sort of make this successful, right? So the technology to do all of this is possible. However, the big barrier that we will have in this space is the complexity of Web3, right? So we are going to actually have to work collectively to make sure that both readers and the writers don't have to go on this big learning curve of learning, okay, do I need wallets? Is this priced in crypto? What platform is this on? How do I get this? Do I keep this or not? All of these things, right? Ideally, what we want is readers and writers should not need more than an email address or a phone number and a credit or a debit card to be able to participate in this revolution, right? It should be just those two things. I should not need a MetaMask wallet or a Coinbase wallet or any other wallet, right? If I give you my email address, that should be enough for me to actually do this. If I paid you $3 for a chapter, that should be enough. I should not have to think about what does that mean in crypto, or where is this stored and stuff. I should be able to engage with all of this just how I engage with any other digital content. I should not need a different set of skills to actually be able to engage with NFTs and to be engaged with this special content. So I think that's the big barrier that we're going to all have to collectively, get over it. We at Stack.me, we are like, that's how we see it. None of the implementations that we have, by the way, of Web3 are visible to readers or writers on Stack. Right? We keep everything, all of that, sort of like behind the curtain. We call it plumbing. We are plumbed by Web3, but everything visible to the actually creators and their fans does not have the Web3 angle to it, right? So today, as I sort of like, end my talk here, my call to action to you is, please experiment, please push the boundaries to what a book can be or should be, experiment with different formats. Because when we do that, right, we are not only sort of being creative and innovative, but we are actually paving paths to a future that is creative and innovative by default, not as an exception. So with that, thank you very much. Hope you guys have a great evening and a great weekend, and take care. Thank you.